So you may have probably already seen this clip of a CN player clearing Katya in 3.1 seconds with the new Lyfe, Tess and Kaguya. I think this might be the world record for the fastest boss kill in Snowbreak, and it can be improved even more. But before we get into her build and discuss her best teams, let me explain her kit in simple terms. So the eye on the screen is her dot shot gauge, which fills when you land shots, and at full gauge you can dodge to activate her dot shot, which if you have at least 10 bullets left in your magazine will do some big ballistic damage, but otherwise the damage is going to be nerfed by 50%. Her standard skill applies a mark on the enemy that gives more dot shot charge, and you also get a dot shot instantly after activating it once you unlock her standard neural skills. So her typical rotation is to use your standard skill, then dot shot, then shoot to build gauge, then dot shot, and you repeat till your standard skill comes back up and you can start the rotation all over again. So here we go, here's a simple rotation demonstration. She also has an ultimate, but it takes a long time to activate and it's not very good for single target damage. So you would only use it for test buff in niche situations when you're clearing neural and you want to cancel the ult right away after using it with your ult button if you're using it just for the test damage buff. But it's pretty good for AoE in like general content. Not that it will matter much because you can just clear most of the mobs with your standard skill and dot shots anyways. Now, let's talk about the build guide and her evaluation. For her evaluation, in the tier list, I put her at SSS+, so if you want to take a look at the tier list real quick, she's up there with Cherno, who is the most broken character in the game. So she is way better than all the other DPS units from past, but she is not gonna touch Cherno for a lot of the content in general because Cherno is pretty broken. But if Lyfe can set world records on bosses that are designed for her specifically, to be honest, then she has potential to actually be even more broken than Cherno. But that'll probably be when Fanny comes out. Will probably be the best support for her. But we'll see. As I said over here, like Fanny Starshine's whole purpose will probably be to make her rotation smoother and increase her damage. But before we get into that, let's just talk about something that I think a lot of people forget about the game. Games are supposed to be about fun. And in terms of fun, I think Lyfe might be the most fun character in the game. So regardless of her being broken, you should pull for her, especially if you're a new player, immediately, because not only is she super strong, she's also the most fun character in my opinion to actually play because she's very mobile and half of her kit relies on actually landing your shot, which is how you fill your dot shot. And some of the bosses are so mobile that you'll actually feel that kind of pressure to land your shots on those mobile bosses to get your fastest time, and it's actually very rewarding to get a pretty low score in neural simulation with Lyfe compared to someone like Cherno or Cirrus, who are like very simple kits. So just for that, I think Lyfe Infinite Sight is a great tool. But other than that, her main source of damage is her dodge shot. So as I demonstrated, you just need to ensure that you at least have 10 bullets in your magazine for the full Davos effect, and you'll be doing a lot of burst ballistic damage. So she has a lot of potential for DPS, and it's quite up to player skill at low investment. It's only at high investment like Whale and Leviathans, as you saw in that video of a CN player, that you can actually kill bosses in mere seconds. For low investment players, it will take you a while to clear stuff because you would only at least need M2 in her manifestations, right? So So if you're pulling her, you need to farm her M2 ASAP for free to play, and you basically need that manifestation, the second manifestation, to ensure that you have super smooth dot shot rotations, because they're both related to dot shot charge. And surprisingly, Season also gave her some pretty decent support skills if you unlock her standard and support neural skills. So her support skill with the Sun CC and final damage buff actually makes her as a support kind of viable, which was surprising to me. But she doesn't really have a good support weapon to be a support yet, so it's probably something they considered for the future. But there is a support build guide too over here, but we'll get there. And then finally, I want to talk about the rotation, right? The rotation actually depends on how much investment you have in your life infinite sight and also your player skill, right? So the perfect optimal rotation relies on always maximizing the damage from the dot shot by having at least 10 bullets in your magazine, which basically means that you have to perfectly use the right amount of bullets in a rotation and not go over or under, so you can have that perfect rotation, which is pretty hard to pull off in actuality, and only those who are like speedrunning Neural at the top of the top tiers are probably going to want to do that. But for in general, she's pretty simple. You just try to squeeze as many shoot plus dot shot rotations between the standard skill and dot shot. So you just want to use your standard skill in your rotation and dot shot whenever you have full ammo. Well, not full ammo, but at least 10 bullets. So her primary build is the kinetic dodge shot DPS build, and in this, of course, you're going to try to do the optimal rotation. Try, because it's hard even for veterans. It's not easy, but it is simple if you can get the hang of it. You start realizing like how much, how many bullets and how long you hold down your mouse button for and whatnot. But as we get better and better, you will be it'll become easier to even squeeze even more DPS out of Lyfe Infinite Sight. And for her weapons, you're probably wondering whether to just stick with the tier 5 event weapon, Revolving Glow, or go for the signature weapon. And I would say you should definitely go for her signature weapon, because her signature weapon is a massive buff to damage. I pulled for her signature weapon immediately as soon as I got the currency for it. And the difference between tier 1 5-star Nightborn Crown and tier 5 4-star Revolving Glow is like over 20%, and with tier 2 it's about 20% as well compared to tier 1 of Nightborn Crown. So it's just massive damage buffs if you pull on the SIG weapon. And what you can do is you can pull the T1 now, and then you can use the 30 weapon components. So you're gonna get a free limited 5-star weapon selector, and you can use the 30 weapon components to get tier 2 of Nightborn Crown. So that's another thing that you can do. And for her logistics, they've started basically releasing logistic sets that are tailor-made for specific operatives now, so there's not really another choice for DPS other than Nova Squad. And this logistic set is insane. 75% damage increase for her main sources of damage is insane. I don't know what they're cooking, but they're definitely cooking a lot. For her optimal substats, attack is the highest priority, because that's what your ballistic damage from the dot shot relies on. Then you have alignment index and skill haste. So alignment index is actually the one that you want to focus on. That's the second priority, and skill haste would be third priority. But there's a caveat here. This also depends on how much investment you have and how well you can pull off her rotations. So ideally, you only have one skill haste around max roll, so around 19.3 on one of the logistic sets, and then you have 2 alignment index for high investment. So that would be pretty good. And if you have M2, then you can pull off a pretty good rotation with that. Then if you feel like you don't have a smooth rotation with that, or you can't pull off a good rotation with your skill, then you can go for 2 skill haste and 1 alignment index for smoother rotation, which honestly feels pretty good to play, but it is slightly lower damage. And if you can pull off a good rotation without any of skill haste, then you can just go full 3 alignment index for max DPS, but I don't think that's gonna work out for most of you, especially if you're playing on mobile. And for the third challenge, you would go for kinetic damage, as usual. For her Neuronics, the order does not matter. You need to rush to unlock all of the clusters ASAP. But if you are gonna unlock, then you wanna go for her standard skills and then her ultimate skills, at least. But you do wanna unlock all 6 of her clusters as fast as you can, because her damage scales with her alignment index, and unlocking all of these clusters will give you a bunch of alignment index and you can upgrade your Davis effect. So she also has a support build, and her support build is essentially just for the stun and final damage buff. So you could use that stun for the navigator effect to get a damage buff if the enemy is not immune to stun. And then you can also decrease kinetic resistance with Twilight. This probably is not going to see any use for a while. Maybe she could be used as a support for Fenny if Fenny is not a pure support, but we'll see. There could be a time where this becomes useful and she gets an actual support weapon that makes this viable. It has happened with Lyfe Wild Hunt before, so it's not always out of the realm of possibility. And then we can look at her team building recommendations. So let's go to the team building guide. It is the latest team building guide, and you're probably going to use her for all of these bosses, right? So let's go down to her table for supports, and here we go. So the primary support priority for you is 5-star Moxer with Alloyed Truth if possible, tier 2 if possible, and that's because she is the best ballistic damage buffer. Now the CN player who got the world record speedrun could have actually improved it with 5-star Moxer, but Katya teleports so much that it's hard to use her skill, and her skill also takes quite a bit of time to cast. So there could be those reasons, or maybe it just doesn't have enough investment. But Moxer is most definitely the best for her when Kebeche works out in favor of the boss or whatever situation you are in, right? So it's kind of dependent on if you have the ability to use Kebeche or not. Now if you're using Neural, then Tess is super good, because as I said earlier, with Tess you can ultimate, cancel it, and start your DPS rotation at like mid investment. But at well investment, you don't even need to ultimate, just as you saw in that clip in the beginning, because her buffs are pretty good. And her second best priority is Kaguya. You basically reducing the resistance, and you can also use Amarna, so you get ballistic damage buff as well. And that's probably what the Chinese player were using as well, Akasha. So Amarna, Kaguya, and Heartagard Tess was probably his build. So for ballistic, if you don't have Moxie, you go for Akasha. If not, then Frisia, Akasha, Ichil. So Ichil is actually super good for Lyfe. Now, that's because she scales really well with attack buffs, and also because the new bosses like Woden are quite tough for new players and casual players with average skills. So if you're finding difficulty, no shame in using 5-star Ichil to get heals and attack buffs, because she's great and she doesn't rely on buffing your damage based on the enemies, so you can kind of buff yourself whenever you want. So she's actually a very good choice. Other than that, you've got a very unlikely support, 4-star Fenny, which was a surprising find, because she actually does pretty decent kinetic shred with Twilight, but also she helps you with ammo management, and so it can help with your rotations a little bit. And it's only in niche scenarios that you're ever going to use this, but it's a pretty good replacement. And then lastly, we have Enya, who does skill damage buff, and you're essentially trying to buff your inside tray damage with Enya, but it can be kind of tricky to put her into your rotation, but if you can pull her off, she's pretty good. But otherwise, I would go in the priority that I listed them out in. Usually you would go for ballistic damage first and then resistance shred. For neural, you use Tess if you have her, but if in some cases, if you don't have all of these 5-star characters, you can use 4-star Acacia and Freesia and even Fenny. So that's it. That's a guide. And I'm also hosting 2 giveaways for limited codes sent to me by Season. So if you go onto my guide, it will be linked in description and also pinned in comments. At the beginning, you can see that there are 2 links. So you can click on this one. This is the first giveaway. You just have to subscribe to the YouTube channel and do all of these steps to enter. Then we have the second one, the Gleam one. This is the other one. And once you enter the giveaway, it's going to end in 7 days on 24th July, 11:59 p.m. PST. I'll be emailing you the codes if you win. Good luck for the giveaway. I hope you win. But that's the end of the video. I hope you found this video useful and have a nice day.